This question is actually phrased slightly differently. I will just phrase it this way myself. Greta Thunberg, discuss. I think that the idea of children, young people, young men and women taking a stand on this is something that obviously we've all been very impressed by. But how important is it that these student leaders, these young people, are standing up and speaking as directly to people, Gina, our age, as they do?
I think it's great. Yeah. I think it's hugely important. I think we need to support them every step of the way. You know, when you say Greta Thunberg, my heart sort of breaks when I think back to the speech she gave at the UN during Climate Week. Not because I thought anything she said was wrong, but I felt like my heart broke because of how passionate she is about this and how much she thinks and believes that the world might end almost tomorrow. That's at least how I read her face. And I'm not disagreeing with her about the existential threat or the need for immediate action, but I just don't want her to be disappointed. I really don't. And I don't want young people to think that their voices aren't heard. So I'm always, as supportive of youth engagement as we possibly can. I think they are seeing very clearly the challenge in front of us. But my hope is that their anger and their disappointment is turned into very specific demands for action. Because I think if you leave it at anger and being upset, you're missing the ability to make the change that you want to see. But we have to get them organized to demand and organized to act. They need a campaign and a strategy. And that's where all the good news is going to come in.
I would say yes, but, and Anthony, I don't know if this is something that you've looked at in terms of youth in America, youth around the world, but I think that the difference is this anger seems to be coming from a place of, you people have screwed us, and like taking by the lapels and saying, no, look, we're not going to sit back and organize like you did in the 1960s. We're going to goddamn well grab you and say, you screwed us up, and we're going to demand something from you. It is very much a different way of approaching the problem than we've had before. I'm wondering how you sense that will be greeted by the rest of us, by the rest of their peers as they come to voting age.
So look, I think Greta Thunberg has done an amazing job of, first of all, being a clarion moral voice, saying, as a kid, I shouldn't even be here. Yeah. Okay, I shouldn't even be here. And she's right. World leaders have failed her and her generation. That's why we're in the situation that we are now in, and why it is getting desperate now. Yep. So she's absolutely right about that. And confrontation is one particular tool that I think can play a really important role. It's not the only one. I think some of the other youth movements that have been growing up at the same time are particularly important, and we've actually done research on inner family dynamics of parents and kids. Okay, so do kids, when parents try to get kids to do stuff around climate change or around energy use, do the kids listen? And likewise, do the kids have an influence on their parents? And as the father of a 16-year-old, I'm glad to tell you that parents do have some influence on their kids. But actually, the arrow of causality or influence has a stronger role from kids to parents. And I think that's one of the most powerful things that kids can do. In fact, one of my favorite groups, the Alliance for Climate Education, has a campaign that they call basically, Mom, Dad, we need to have a talk. So it's basically inverting the talk to your kids about sex and drugs and so on, and now saying, actually, we need to talk, Mom and Dad, about climate change.
And that data showed that the strongest level of influence is between adolescent girls and their fathers. That there's like a particular father-daughter dynamic where the girls have a really big influence on the family. And the thing I would add to this question about Greta is, the thing that's important about Greta is how many other girls followed her. because it wouldn't exist if it was just her on a strike by herself outside of government in Sweden, right? The fact that these other teenage girls were like, that's a good idea. I'm in. I'm going to do it in my city. I'm going to organize my friends. I mean, that's how you have a movement, and I think we sort of sell short the importance of following. Like, we should all jump on the bandwagons that need to be jumped on, and I think that's been so beautiful to see, and honestly, like, it's a very feminist approach to leadership, right? Like, the people who are leading the youth climate movement, it's mostly girls. I mean, we see Jamie Margolin, we see Alexandria Villaseñor, we see all of these young women coming together and organizing together and figuring out ways to support each other. And yes, they need stronger strategy and more specific demands, but I think the groundswell has been so powerful because, like, it was just Greta, and now it's very clearly not. Because I spoke at the youth climate strike in New York in September, and there were like 300,000 people there. And I was by far the oldest speaker. I was like, you guys know I'm 39, right? Like, you can uninvite me if you need to. But the remarks that I made were around the importance of the moral clarity that youth are bringing to this.
Absolutely.
Like, as we grow up, we get so comfortable with compromise and so comfortable with, like, well, maybe later, and I guess there are reasons why it is that way. And their ability to just cut through all the crap and say, like, we need to do better and we need to do it now, I think has absolutely moved the needle in a really beautiful way.
I think, I think it's, what touches at least me the most is their call for fairness. They really approach this as a moral issue, and it needs to be. It is an equity issue, and it isn't fair. And I think they're just calling us on it in a way that makes you feel wonderfully uncomfortable.
Yeah. And to hear teenagers talk about intersectionality and the way that social justice is a part of the climate movement, and, like, they're schooling all of us. They're like, this is related to everything, and so we have to tackle it together in this multidisciplinary way. And it's just been really great to see them just broaden the conversation and bring all these issues together. And I'm just like, yeah, that
And
sounds
if I
right.
can just add one other, I think, important thing about this, and that is that it was just over 1 year ago that Greta Thunberg was sitting by herself outside the parliament in Sweden. And 1 year later, a teenage girl in Sweden has inspired 4 million people to join her on the streets. Okay? That's how fast social change can happen. Okay?
It's amazing.
And the one other thing, though, and I just got to say this because unfortunately I hear too many older people, and I count myself in that group now, then say,
don't
oh,
count
thank
myself.
God the kids are going to take care of us.
No, that's not fair.
No, absolutely not, boomers. You don't get away with that. You don't get away with that. In fact, we need the older generation more now than ever, okay? The boomer generation that is now entering retirement is entering retirement with a lifetime of experience, of talent, of resources, and the most important thing of all, time. Okay? Time to invest in building and strengthening and demanding action. Okay? So this needs to be ultimately a partnership between the kids and the grandparents.
I'm there.
Good.